So Joe Rogan just entered the chat, and he is Team Justin Baldoni.
Brace yourself for the moment Joe Rogan crashes into a Hollywood feud like a runaway freight train.
And it's absolutely absurd, and it's not going to work.
Imagine you're on the outside looking in as Justin Baldoni, a soft-spoken actor-director, battles two A-list powerhouses, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, who seem dead set on hijacking his hard-earned project.
This is what you get. You're trying to fucking ruin a guy's livelihood by using the Me Too movement.
Because they were trying to take over the movie.
Yeah.
They were trying to take over the movie and the whole franchise. He owned the franchise.
They're fucked.
The whole
man.
thing's crazy.
They're fucked.
And he's suing the New York Times.
Rogan doesn't do half measures. He doesn't tiptoe into the conversation. He stomps in, microphone blazing, and sides with Baldoni so publicly that it feels like a declaration of war. Suddenly, everyone's rethinking where they stand.
How she's using it to assert control over Justin Baldoni, destroy his life. Essentially, it was destroying his family, his health, and everything else.
Overnight, the narrative shatters. Those who had automatically believed the fault, lay with Baldoni, the underdog, start saying, wait a minute, Joe Rogan thinks there's more here. And we're not talking about a small endorsement in a quiet corner of the internet. Rogan's fan base spans millions on social media and podcast platforms. The power of his audience is like an electric current jolting people to attention and lighting up the conversation with a fiery new perspective.
It's a bunch of fabrication and lies, and then you see the control that she took over the movie, and I just don't see how any of these reporters are coming to that conclusion other than they are just trying to meet some type of agenda.
But here's the twist that makes this saga more than just another round of celebrity gossip. Rogan is not championing a cause based on blind loyalty. He's shining a spotlight on alleged distortion of the Me Too movement, one of the most significant cultural reckonings of our generation, by two darlings of Hollywood known for their quick wit and red carpet glamour.
That's what it takes.
It's like Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
He's like, all right,
Yeah.
he did it for the boys.
Exactly. You got to do it.
You need real motherfuckers to be like, nah, man, I ain't going out like this.
Yeah, especially a guy like that. It was like known as being like this really sweet, nice guy.
Yeah.
By entering the ring, Rogan effectively says, enough misinformation, enough manipulative PR spin, let's see the facts. In a single podcast episode, he catapults Baldoni's side of the story into mainstream conversation, leaving Blake and Ryan scrambling for cover. As the smoke clears, you sense the real power Rogan wields. This might not be a legal victory, but it's a victory in the court of public opinion. And that, as we've all seen in the age of social media, can be just as game-changing as any courtroom battle. Or maybe even more so, because what Joe Rogan says in his echo chamber can suddenly become tonight's dinner table debate in households worldwide. Close your eyes and picture a social movement born out of pain and struggle, individuals speaking up after years of silence, rallying to expose hidden abuse and level the playing field. Now imagine that same movement being twisted into a blunt instrument aimed at someone's livelihood, not for the cause of justice, but for creative control and personal gain. That's the stark contrast painted here, with Lively and Reynolds, accused of taking a global call for accountability and turning it into a Hollywood chess piece. This is no small accusation. According to the emerging details, the Me Too banner, once hoisted high to protect genuine victims of harassment, was slung around simply to sidestep negotiations and bulldoze Baldoni out of his own project. The shocking part isn't just the alleged misuse, it's that the orchestrators are two beloved figures remembered for comedic charm and philanthropic gestures. Fans think of Reynolds winking at the camera in Deadpool or Lively championing various charities. The disconnect could not be sharper if it were drawn in neon lights. As you listen to the claims and counterclaims, Rogan's critique cuts through the spectacle. This is about power, pure and simple. He asserts that instead of safeguarding survivors, certain celebrities discovered they could leverage accusations to seize creative authority. It's a betrayal not just of one individual, but of all the real victims whose experiences should have been treated with dignity, not as a stick to whack an opponent. In the swirl of paparazzi flashes and blockbuster headlines, the entire premise of Believe survivors gets tainted by these allegations. We're left wondering, how many in Hollywood have done this before, skating by on star power and spin? And worse, how many innocent creatives and executives were crushed under that unstoppable wave of unverified claims? This saga is a glaring reminder that even righteous causes can be exploited if they fall into the wrong hands. It's a warning about adorning the wealthy and powerful with automatic halos, assuming they're above reproach. And as the tension builds, the question that remains is this: will the receipts be enough to expose the manipulations behind the scenes, so the taunter Me Too movement isn't remembered for the very hypocrisy it set out to dismantle? Picture yourself yourself as Justin Baldoni. You've poured your heart into directing a story you care about, only to watch it spiral into chaos at the hands of two megastars calling you a harasser. When faced with public scorn, your first instinct might be to defend yourself with timid denials. But Baldoni doesn't flinch. Instead, he unleashes a veritable avalanche of evidence. Text messages, recordings, behind-the-scenes footage, and more, colloquially known as the receipts. This is where the House of Cards starts looking pretty wobbly. At first, the allegations by Lively seem to place Baldoni in a predicament straight out of a tabloid scandal, entering her dressing room without permission, making her feel unsafe on set. But then, like a gust of wind blasting through a stage set, the text messages show she explicitly invited him in. Twitter and forum chatter exploded. Did she really try to rewrite history, or was the situation more complicated than we realize? Baldoni's evidence doesn't end there. It addresses moments where Lively allegedly made calls that a director should have made, sending the real director off to the sidelines. In voice notes, you can almost hear the tension simmering beneath polite Hollywood pleasantries. Suddenly, people who once assumed his guilt are confronted with verifiable data that flips the story 180 degrees. Accusations of wrongdoing transform into a tale of sabotage and manipulation. As fans sift through the documents, they find themselves in a moral quandary. Should they trust the glamorous couple whose every public appearance seemed wholesome and adorable, or the man armed with a mountain of proof contradicting every claim? In this climate, the receipts aren't just phone logs or text chains, they become a lifeline for a man's reputation. And in an industry where star power effortlessly crushes lesser-known players, producing these receipts might be the only way to get a fair hearing. In short, it's a modern David and Goliath story, with receipts in place of a slingshot, forcing everyone to question how many times illusions have trumped reality in Hollywood's gilded narrative. In the wake of the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard maelstrom, public perception of high-profile accusations has changed forever. The memory of televised trials, bombshell revelations, and a consensus that the narrative was far more complex than anyone realized is still fresh. So when Joe Rogan likens Justin Baldoni's predicament to Depp's, ears prick up across the internet. Instantly, the mind flashes back to the sensational headlines and countless memes that erupted as details of Depp's case spilled into the public sphere. Rogan's comparison isn't frivolous. He sees parallels in how a cherished public figure, like Baldoni, known for his heartfelt roles and activism, can quickly morph into a villain if a story is spun convincingly enough. With Depp, the assumption of guilt had him losing roles, sponsorships, and his good standing in Hollywood, right up until the moment he fought back with evidence that had people gasping. Baldoni's path is charting a similar course, from being widely applauded for championing empathy and understanding in entertainment, to suddenly wearing the label of an abuser that fans never saw coming. And yet, here we stand again at a cultural crossroads. Did we learn anything from the Depp-Heard fiasco about not leaping to conclusions or letting bandwagon outrage guide our judgments? Rogan's commentary suggests we might be repeating the same mistake, allowing glitzy PR narratives to overshadow the gritty truth. It's a pattern that watchers of the Depp trial will find disturbingly familiar, right down to the frantic attempts to shut down any dissenting voices before evidence can come to light. What truly amplifies the déjà vu is how the media machine initially sided with Lively and Reynolds, echoing the broad strokes of a powerful actress's claims over a quieter director's pleas. It echoes the days when supporting all women became conflated with condemning specific men without a full investigation. The question now is, will Baldoni's story, combined with Rogan's megaphone, be the turning point that reveals a bigger pattern of exploitation? Or will it dissolve into the same shoutfest, even as more receipts keep tumbling out? Try to imagine, if you will, a lawsuit so immense it's practically a tsunami. Not a few $1,000s, not even a few million, but a staggering $400 million. It's the kind of number that makes your head spin and your palms sweat. That's the figure swirling around Justin Baldoni's defamation and fraud suit, aimed directly at Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and even the New York Times. It's not just a piece of paper filed in a courthouse. It's a siren blaring across the entertainment landscape, proclaiming that this is more than a petty squabble or a minor defamation spat. For Baldoni, this lawsuit means redemption or ruin. If he wins, Hollywood power players might finally think twice before weaponizing half-baked allegations. If he loses, he risks carrying the stigma of an abuser for the rest of his career. You can almost feel the industry holding its collective breath, because a verdict or settlement of this magnitude would change the game. No longer would hush-money deals and carefully massaged press releases suffice to bury controversies. This is a shot squarely at the heart of Hollywood's most time-honored tactic, the swift pump and dump of damaging narratives that rarely see a courtroom. And then there's the New York Times angle, the so-called paper of record. Baldoni is claiming that even they took an unbalanced stance, further tilting the public scale against him. After all, if mainstream media frames you as guilty, you can consider your public public trust shattered. So, Baldoni isn't just fighting a battle for his personal reputation. He's also confronting a journalistic institution that wields the power to influence millions of readers. Like a thunderclap in the middle of this already stormy saga, the $400 million lawsuit signals an end to backroom settlements and silent acceptance. It suggests a future where big-time celebrities might have to think carefully before launching into sensational allegations without a foundation. This could be the landmark case that prompts the entire industry to ask, do we have the facts straight? And if Baldoni prevails, it might just prove that not even Hollywood's most adored couple is above accountability. Picture a film set, usually controlled by its director and producers. Now imagine Blake Lively, typically hailed as America's sweetheart, stepping in like a conqueror claiming new territory. The story swirling around her involvement reads like a page out of a drama-filled novel. Lively allegedly calls the shots on casting, instructs the composer who can and can't remain on the job, and even barricades Justin Baldoni, the actual director, from viewing the footage he's supposed to be shaping. Audible gasps fill the air. This isn't petty micromanagement. This is someone rewriting the entire power dynamic of a production. It's the kind of narrative turn you'd expect from a Machiavellian villain, rather than an actress whose brand trades on approachability and warmth. Yet here we are, listening to stories about Lively essentially turning the set into her personal domain, firing and hiring whoever she pleases. People who signed onto the project thinking they were working under Baldoni's vision now find that it's Lively calling all the shots. Even more astonishing is the claim that she used allegations of harassment to further consolidate power, invoking *Me Too, as if it were a free pass to unilaterally seize control. The tension on set must have been electric. Visualize Baldoni standing at a monitor with arms crossed, wanting to direct, only to be told, Blake said no. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew looks around, unsure whether to speak up or keep their heads down to avoid being the next casualty. This extends beyond typical creative differences. It suggests a deliberate campaign to eclipse the original vision for the film. If you compare this scenario to a high-stakes boardroom coup, you wouldn't be far off. Instead of a corporate ladder, it's a film staff. Instead of company shares, it's creative control. And at the center is Lively, emerging from the comforts of star status into the role of a behind-the-scenes heavyweight. As rumors spread, it appears her self-professed victimhood might be cloaking a power move that could overshadow the entire production. No wonder people are left scratching their heads, asking, where does the real Blake Lively end and the orchestrated persona begin? If Blake Lively burst onto the scene like a surprise antagonist, then Ryan Reynolds steps in as the smooth-talking sidekick who might have just orchestrated half the plan. Think of Reynolds, the wisecracking Deadpool, the darling of internet banter, the man whose advertising campaigns for Mint Mobile and Aviation Gin ooze charisma. Now flip that mental image. The accusations claim he stands in the middle of a grand scheme to push Baldoni out, fully aware, if not complicit, of how these Docker and Me Too flavored accusations would tip the balance. Envision Reynolds' juggling brand, ambassadorship and film production with a swagger so casual you'd believe he never broke a sweat. But suddenly the tabloids and social media swirl with evidence hinting he might be just as entangled as Lively in trying to gain creative control. It's as if the comedic mask slips, and what remains is a man who would leverage every possible angle to secure an advantage, betraying not only a colleague, but perhaps fans who believed in his good guy persona. What's especially striking is how swiftly Reynolds seems to have entered damage control mode once public scrutiny, amplified by Rogan's spotlight, intensified. The transcript suggests he distances himself from Lively's claims, only to be reminded by opposing attorneys that he's a key part of the lawsuit. That's the moment the comedic facade cracks, revealing a Hollywood star grappling with a narrative he can't just joke away. It leaves fans caught between their affection for Reynolds and the mounting evidence that his underdog shtick might be just that, shtick. The man who once delighted audiences with meta jokes about the film industry now appears deeply mired in its ugliest machinations. For spectators, it's a rude awakening. If Reynolds, champion of lovable anti-heroes, stands accused of orchestrating someone's professional demise, then what illusions are we clinging to about celebrity images? It's a stark reminder that in Hollywood, exceptionally well-crafted masks can hide surprisingly ruthless ambitions. Take a moment to picture how quickly news stories can spread in our digital age. One whisper becomes a trending hashtag, one headline can send stocks plummeting or reputations crashing. In this swirling environment, outlets wasted no time pouncing on the Baldoni allegations, painting him as the villain almost overnight. Without waiting for evidence, plenty of journalists and tabloids hopped on the sensational bandwagon, printing and reposting Lively's accusations as though they were ironclad fact. Now imagine yourself as a viewer, reflexively inclined to trust big names and major publications. You scroll through articles that highlight alleged misdeeds by Baldoni, but offer next to nothing about the counter evidence. It's only when Baldoni's team unleashes the receipts, and especially when Joe Rogan steps in that the narrative begins to shift. Suddenly, that initial wave of coverage looks suspiciously one-sided. Why weren't certain press outlets digging deeper? Did they choose the more salacious angle because it guaranteed clicks? Or were they swayed by Lively and Reynolds' star power? An especially jarring twist is the New York Times becoming a target of Baldoni's legal action. Think about the weight of that name, how it shapes public opinion in ways few publications can match. If the Times, with all its journalistic rigor, is perceived to have run a biased piece, you're left wondering how deep the influence of Hollywood stardom truly goes. Could it be that even the nation's most reputable paper wasn't immune to the allure of printing a high-profile scandal? Before verifying essential facts, in any other industry, a slanted article might cause a minor uproar. But here, entire careers are on the line. The lionization of Lively and Reynolds as unstoppable celebrity icons turned the press coverage into something almost bulletproof, until Baldoni, armed with screenshots and audio recordings, forced them to revisit their narrative. And in that moment, the media's classic rush to judgment stands glaringly exposed, as if everyone's realized too late that they participated in a feeding frenzy that devoured someone's professional life without ever asking if they had the right meal. On the menu, close your eyes and recall the collective sense of progress that blossomed when the Me Too movement gained global traction. Survivors, long frightened into silence, were stepping forward, and the world was finally listening. Now fast forward to a moment where that same movement might be twisted to serve personal ambitions. This is the crux of what critics, led by Rogan's bold statements, accuse Lively and Reynolds of doing, and it's making waves far beyond this one scandal. Suddenly, people are revisiting the concept of believe all women. Nobody wants to discard or delegitimize genuine stories of abuse, but now it's crystal clear how even a righteous sentiment can be exploited, and the fallout is massive. Voices from all corners of social media express frustration mixed with grief, worried that manipulations like these cast an undeserved shadow over true survivors' experiences. This is personal politics entangled with collective justice, sending activists into uproar as they try to safeguard a movement built on decades of hard-won battles. Rogan's commentary acts like a megaphone to these concerns. He reminds listeners that while many stories of harassment or assault are grippingly true, celebrity-driven narratives can muddy the water. They can paint an unverified story in flashy neon lights simply because the people involved are well known. The tragedy then lies in the public's reaction. They become more skeptical overall, potentially doubting the next honest survivor who comes forward. And in the background, you hear real feminists, those who've championed equality day in and day out, groaning at the idea that now Me Too could be treated like a cheat code for power plays. They speak out, clarifying that feminism isn't about pillorying men for the sake of it. It's about justice, sincerity, and fairness. For those rooted in the original ethos of Me Too, seeing it weaponized is like watching a beloved structure set aflame from the inside. And so the ripple effect is profound, stirring uncomfortable questions on how best to protect genuine survivors while also thwarting opportunists. Big questions that go well beyond Hollywood and into the heart of social justice itself. As the dust settles around these explosive allegations, you can almost imagine Hollywood executives gossiping in hushed tones behind velvet curtains. Is this saga the beginning of a slow fade for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, once revered as the golden couple? Or could it mark a deeper, more permanent shift in the film industry, one that no PR magician can easily spin away? Justin Baldoni is not backing down. He's not timidly stepping around NDAs or gently protesting he's been wronged. He's wielding a lawsuit so colossal it's shaking the very foundation of this star couple's empire, and he's backed by a tsunami of evidence that includes text messages and voice notes that few can dispute. Joe Rogan's involvement amplifies the quake, pulling in demographics that never cared much for Hollywood drama before this. It's not just film buffs and celebrity watchers anymore. You've got gym bros, podcast fanatics, even casual Spotify listeners who now know all the dirty details. In this climate, reputations can't hide behind the usual glossy magazine covers or late-night TV charm routines. The public, emboldened by social media, demands more than carefully worded press releases. They want the gritty details, the behind-the-scenes footage, and the unfiltered receipts. So here we stand, at what might be the makings of a watershed moment. If Baldoni triumphs in court, Hollywood's old guard could find itself grappling with new standards of transparency. Frivolous or opportunistic misconduct allegations may lose their power when pitted against verifiable evidence. Alternatively, if Lively and Reynolds manage to sidestep these claims, a sobering message might be sent to would-be whistleblowers. Celebrity status can still bulldoze you. Either way, it feels like a tipping point. The fairy tale illusions surrounding Hollywood stardom have started to crack. No one is fully above scrutiny anymore, not even a comedic icon and his picture-perfect partner. As you watch this drama unfold, you can't help but sense that this might be the start of a very different chapter in Tinseltown. A chapter where hype alone can't quash the truth, and where receipts speak louder than red carpet smiles.